Nero Wolfe and the Whisper Killer. Chapter 1, A Whisper in the Dark. If there's one thing I've learned working for Nero Wolfe, it's that trouble rarely knocks on the front door at a convenient hour. It usually sneaks in sideways, under the rug, behind the drapes, or in this case, on a Wednesday at 7:12 p.m., when Fritz was halfway through preparing a duck that had spent 2 days soaking in a secret marinade I wasn't allowed to smell, let alone touch. I was in the office tying up the day's loose ends, namely a $5 cab chit Wolfe had accused me of patting, when the doorbell rang. Wolfe, who was upstairs communing with his orchids, yelled down the stairway with all the warmth of a polar wind. "Archie. Confound it, answer that." As if I needed the reminder. I headed to the door, opened it, and found a young woman on the stoop who looked like she'd sprinted through a thunderstorm that wasn't on the forecast. Not a hair was out of place, mind you, her dark curls were pinned neatly, but her eyes were carrying a freight of panic, and panic doesn't lie. Are you Mr. Goodwin?" she asked, breathless. "That depends," I said. "Are you selling vacuum cleaners or trouble?" "Trouble," she said, without hesitation. "Please. I need help." That word, help, has a funny way of taking a routine evening and pitching it into the East River. Still, I stepped aside. "Come in. You picked the right place, but the big guy upstairs will have opinions about the timing." She followed me inside, glancing around like the walls might whisper something at her. That registered, though I didn't know why yet. "Your name?" I asked, guiding her to a chair. "Elena Brooke." "What kind of trouble are you carrying, Miss Brooke?" Before she could answer, Wolfe descended the stairs with the slow, regal displeasure of a king forced to acknowledge a commoner. His face said he was one step from calling the district attorney to make unapproved house calls illegal. "Archie," he growled, "why in God's name?" Then he saw her. Wolfe hates being interrupted, he hates emergencies, he hates emotional displays. But he especially hates all three at once. She stood. "Mr. Wolfe, please forgive the intrusion, but I was told you're the only man in New York who can help me." "That is nonsense," Wolfe said, lowering himself into his chair with a sigh that could have powered a steam engine. "New York is infested with men eager to meddle." "But not with your brilliance," she said. Flattery is the only known tranquilizer for Nero Wolfe. His eyebrow twitched, the Wolfe equivalent of doing cartwheels. "Sit," he instructed. "Speak concisely." Saturday, someone is stalking me. Whispering threats. Calling me at all hours. Following me. I don't know who or why, but he calls himself," she swallowed. "The Whisper." I glanced at Wolfe. He did not blink. "Explain." "It started 3 weeks ago," she said. "Phone calls at night, just breathing at first. Then words. Always low, like he was speaking from inside a closet. He said he sees me everywhere. That he knows where I live, where I work, every step I take. Most men in this city claim omniscience," Wolfe muttered, "yet can't locate a belt they wore yesterday." She ignored that. "Then 3 days ago, he told me I'd made a mistake. He said I had 1 week left. Archie Goodwin, ace detective though I am, has a soft spot for terrified damsels. Wolfe knows this and weaponizes it when convenient. But this woman didn't need dramatics. Her voice carried a tremor that wasn't rehearsed. I leaned forward. "Any idea what mistake he's talking about?" "No," she said. "I don't. I don't know anyone who'd want to harm me." Wolfe snorted. "A meaningless statement. Every living creature has provoked someone's malice. Do not insult me with generalities. Names, Miss Brooke. Associates. Enemies." She folded her hands tightly. "There's no one. I keep to myself." Wolfe grimaced. "Pfui. He hates puzzles without pieces." Before he could press her, the phone rang. I moved to get it, but Wolfe lifted a hand. Let her answer, he said quietly. I handed her the receiver. She hesitated, then lifted it to her ear. Hello. For a second, the office fell into a hush so tight it felt like a held breath. Then I heard it. A faint, almost inaudible whispering. Not words. More like the suggestion of words. A rustle of breath. Her face drained. She slammed the phone down. That was him. Wolfe's eyes narrowed to slits. What did he say? He didn't say anything this time. She shivered. He just whispered. He always whispers. Archie, Wolfe said. Trace it. I jumped to the phone and checked the line, but the call had been cut clean. No chance of tracing anything short of divine intervention. She stood abruptly. Thank you, Mr. Wolfe, but I shouldn't have come. I thought maybe. She shook her head. Forget it. She darted to the door. Miss Brooke. I reached for her shoulder, but she slipped past like a gust of cold wind. By the time I got the door open, she was halfway down the block, her heels clicking like an urgent Morse code. I turned back to Wolfe, who was massaging his brow with two thick fingers. Well? I asked. Well what? He retorted. You expect me to rupture my routine to pursue a ghost who communicates in whispers? No. Confound it. No. I went to my desk. She's scared. And someone's playing for keeps. Emotion is not evidence. He rang the bell for Fritz with a flick that could have severed heads. My dinner schedule has been mangled enough. But the call. A prank. A lunatic. A suitor with poor manners. Wolfe waved it off like smoke. But his eyes stayed fixed on the phone a second too long for my liking. Dinner came and went. Fritz's duck was an experience I'd like to relive someday without a stalker in the background. Wolfe chewed, brooded, drank beer, and pretended he wasn't thinking about Elena Brooke. At 10:41 p.m., the phone rang again. Wolfe didn't flinch this time. Answer it. I did. Goodwin. No sound. Hello. Nothing. Only a whisper, faint as dust sliding off a shelf. Then, words. Soft. Too soft. Too late. The whisper cut off. I turned slowly to Wolfe. He set his beer down with a clunk. Who? He asked. Sounded like our silent friend. Wolfe scowled at the ceiling, as if demanding an apology from heaven. Then the doorbell rang. I headed for it, not liking the rhythm this evening was taking. When I opened the door, Inspector Kramer stood there, his cigar clenched so tight it was a wonder it hadn't snapped. Goodwin, he barked, pushing past me, where's Wolfe? Wolfe looked up as Kramer stormed in. What now? Wolfe asked. Kramer threw a folded handkerchief on the desk. Inside it was a small slip of paper. Elena Brooke, found dead. 9:35 p.m. whispered words heard by neighbor. I felt the room tilt. Kramer crossed his arms. She came to you today. Why? Wolfe didn't answer. And for the first time that evening, I saw something rare on his face, something tight, something cold. Guilt. Or the closest Wolfe ever gets to it. Kramer leaned in. And believe me, Wolfe, this whisper character. He's just getting started. Wolfe exhaled sharply through his nose. Archie, he said, voice low. Get your notebook. We are involved. At last. The whisper had made it personal. Chapter 2, Wolfe accepts the unpleasant. The look Inspector Kramer gave Nero Wolfe would have peeled the paint off the office walls if Fritz's polish hadn't already made them invulnerable. You going to tell me why a woman walks in here this afternoon terrified for her life, and 6 hours later she's on a slab? Kramer demanded. Wolfe sat deep in the big chair, fingers interlaced on his middle, expression set to barely tolerant. The only sign he was rattled was his left thumb, which had started a slow tapping against his index finger, a tiny drumroll of annoyance. I was unaware, Wolfe said, that your jurisdiction included my caller's future decisions, Inspector. She came, she left. You have telescoped the intervening events in a way that does not serve clarity. Kramer's cigar jumped. Clarity? She's dead. Name's Elena Brooke. You know that, Wolfe. She was found in her apartment around 9:30, and a neighbor reports hearing whispered words in the hallway right before the time we estimate she died. That ring a bell? It rang, all right. I just didn't like the chime. Wolfe turned his head an inch toward me. Archie. Facts. Succinctly. I gave it to them both. She showed up around 7:15. Said she'd been getting threatening phone calls from a man who only whispers. Calls himself the Whisper. Claims he sees her everywhere, knows she made some unspecified mistake and has 1 week left. While she was here, the phone rang. I let her answer. I heard whispering on the line, too faint to catch words. She panicked and bolted. Kramer stared at me like he was trying to decide if I was lying or just naturally unhelpful. And you didn't think to call me when a woman walked out of here scared to death? I shrugged. We're not your switchboard, Inspector. She didn't hire us, didn't leave an address, and Mr. Wolfe is a firm believer in not chasing business down the stairs. Wolfe grunted. And you, Inspector, are being disingenuous. A frightened woman in New York is not a novelty. You know it, and I know it. Yeah, Kramer said, but this one turned up with marks on her neck and no sign of forced entry. Door locked, chain on. Someone she knew or someone she trusted got close enough to kill her. I'd like to know if that's connected to a mystery whisperer you two were entertaining. Entertaining is generous, I said. He's not exactly champagne and a floor show. Kramer ignored me and fixed on Wolfe. What else did she tell you? Names. Places. Any hint of somebody she was afraid of. She asserted she had no enemies, Wolfe said. Which was, of course, absurd. I hadn't yet reduced that particular absurdity when she fled. I intended to have Archie follow her, but the call. He stopped. That was as close to an admission of error as you'll get from Nero Wolfe without a court order. The call. Kramer said. We received another whispering call after she left, Wolfe said. Some 15 minutes ago. Archie answered. He heard. 2 words, I supplied. Too late. Then nothing. Kramer's jaw tightened. You're sure? I have not yet begun inventing whispers, I said. When I do, you'll get a demonstration. They'll be much wittier. He took 2 short chomps at the cigar, then shoved a hand in his coat and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He slapped it on Wolfe's desk. That's her address. I've still got men at the scene. You want to play helpful for once, lend Goodwin to me for a look. Maybe he'll notice something, since you're so proud of that brain you keep chained in a chair. Wolfe's lips flattened. He hates having Archie loaned like equipment. On the other hand, he hates being left out of a puzzle even more. Fa, he said eventually. We're already embroiled. Archie will go. On one condition. Here it comes, Kramer muttered. You will not, Wolfe continued, attempt to treat him as one of your subordinates. He is my agent. He will observe and question. He will not be obstructed by the petty pride of your underlings. Kramer's eyes went flat. You give me that speech every time, and every time I regret putting up with it, he said. Fine. He can look. But understand this, Wolfe, if I find any indication you knew more than you're saying, I'll make it very unpleasant in here. Routine or no routine. You have never, Wolfe said, made it pleasant. That ended the social hour. Kramer stomped out, trailing smoke and hard feelings. When the door closed, Wolfe blew out a long breath and shifted his bulk. "Archie, get your coat," he said. "That's a phrase I never tire of," I told him. "It makes me feel useful." "Any special orders?" "Yes." "Observe the apartment thoroughly. Pay particular attention to the telephone, any written notes, and indications of someone having visited her recently. Also, question any neighbor who heard these whispered words. Their perception of volume, tone, and distance may be revealing." "Got it." Whisper diagnostics. I paused. "Anything else?" "Yes. Do not let Inspector Kramer provoke you into a display of childish piquancy. I require your eyes and ears, not your sarcasm." "That's harsh," I said. "My sarcasm is one of my top 3 features." He closed his eyes, signaling that further conversation would be a violation of the peace. I headed out. The city at night has a way of pretending it doesn't know what you're up to. Traffic slides by in streaks of light, strangers' faces blur behind cab windows, and every street lamp casts shadows long enough to hide in. I hailed a taxi on 9th Avenue and gave the driver Elena Brooks' address, a narrow building on a side street east of Broadway. We pulled up in 20 minutes. The block was mostly tired brownstones leaning on each other for support, with a corner grocery exhaling the stale perfume of old oranges and newspapers. 2 squad cars marked the crime scene, their red lights spun lazily, painting the front of Elena's building in nervous color. A uniform at the door looked me over like I might be selling raffle tickets. "Yeah. Goodwin," I said, flipping my notebook open to show a card Kramer once signed on a good day. "Consultant. The inspector's expecting me." He squinted, decided arguing would take more effort than it was worth, and waved me through. Inside, the staircase smelled of old paint and boiled cabbage, a classic New York mix. 3rd floor, apartment 3B, a couple of uniforms in the hall, and the door stood open. The lock and chain had been undone, likely by the super with the cops in tow. Kramer was inside, arms folded, watching a photographer finish his work. Sergeant Stebbins, who enjoys seeing me about as much as I enjoy tax audits, stood near the window. "You're late," Kramer grunted. "I came as fast as the cab could crawl," I said. "What's the story?" "Single tenant," he said. "No sign of forced entry. Body was in the living room, near the couch. Bruising on the neck consistent with manual strangulation. No weapon. Nothing obviously stolen." The photographer packed his gear and left. When the room cleared a bit, I stepped in and took a good look. It was a small but tidy space, a couch, a small table, 2 chairs, a bookcase with more paperbacks than I'd have guessed from her scared little girl routine, and a narrow desk with a telephone perched on the corner. No sign of wild struggle, a lamp was tipped, and one cushion had slid to the floor, but nothing smashed, no drawers yanked out and dumped. On the table were an ashtray with 1 cigarette butt, lipstick stained, and an empty cup with a coffee ring. Only 1 cup. Either her killer didn't drink coffee, or he preferred to keep his hands free. "Who found her?" I asked. Kramer jerked his head toward the doorway. "Neighbor across the hall. Mrs. Linsky. Says she heard a man's voice whispering outside, then a thud, then nothing. Came out 10 minutes later to see if everything was all right when she didn't hear the victim's radio like usual." "Radio's off," I noted. "Yeah. We noticed." I moved to the phone. Old black rotary, city standard. Next to it was a small notepad, the top page torn off. The second page had an impression, numbers faintly indented. I bent closer. With the wrong company, that would have looked suspicious, but I was with the right one, me. "Mind if I borrow a pencil and make a rubbing?" I asked. Kramer hesitated, then waved to Stebbins, who produced a pencil like he was handing me a loaded gun. I shaded lightly over the paper until the previous writing darkened into view, 212-555-37 and then a faint, unfinished curve. Somebody started a number and quit, I said. You get her phone records yet? We're working on it, Stebbins said. She made a call around 7, supposedly, but we don't have the detail yet. 7. Around the time she came to see us. It didn't take Wolfe to see that pattern. Where was the body exactly? I asked. Kramer pointed to the carpet near the couch. There. On her back. Hands near her throat. No sign of restraint. Door locked from the inside? Yeah. Chain latched. We had to get the super to bring his master key and unhook it. Window there was locked too. He jerked his head toward the single window overlooking the street. Old sash window, paint thick around the edges, not a burglar's friend. So she let him in, I said. Or he already had a key. Or he never left, Stebbins said, giving me a look that implied he enjoyed that theory more than he should. I filed that away and went to talk to the neighbor. Mrs. Linsky was a compact woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a robe that had seen too many winters. She stood in her doorway, twisting a handkerchief. I already told him, she said, nodding toward a departing uniform. How many times I have to say it? Just once more, I said. I'm not the police. Name's Goodwin. You a lawyer? Only on rainy days. Mostly, I ask questions for a living. She huffed. Then ask. You said you heard a whisper. In the hall. She nodded. I was in my kitchen. I heard someone on the landing. I thought maybe Mrs. Brooke had company, a gentleman, you know, she waved a hand. But it wasn't normal. It was, low. Like he was afraid someone would hear. I couldn't make out the words. Just, SSS, like that. She gave a little demonstration that sent a chill down the hall. How long did it go on? Maybe half a minute. Then I heard a thump. Like someone dropped something heavy. Did you open your door then? She looked embarrassed. No. I thought it was none of my business. Only later, when it was still quiet, I got worried. Usually she listens to that radio after 9. Music, talking. Tonight, nothing. What time you come out? 10 after 9, maybe. I knocked, no answer. Then I went downstairs to get Mr. Feldman, the super. He said he'd check. Next thing, police everywhere. Did you ever see anyone hanging around the building? Watching her? She pursed her lips. There's always men looking. She was pretty. Had a nice job, dressed nice. Some men think that means something. She sniffed. But there was a fellow last week, outside, across the street. Standing under the street lamp, not moving. I saw him 3 nights in a row. Always when she came home. Could you see his face? No. Hat pulled down. He smoked. That's all. Cigarette, not a pipe. Tall. Short. Tallish. Not fat. Walked away quick when she went inside. That was something, a tall smoker under a street lamp who liked reruns. One more thing, I said. Did she ever mention anyone bothering her? At work or here? She said once that someone wouldn't leave her alone, Mrs. Linsky said slowly. She didn't say who. Only that it was complicated and she'd handle it. People always think they'll handle it. Until they don't. I thanked her and went back into the apartment for another look. This time, I knelt by the couch. On the floor, half under the edge of the rug, was a small object the crime scene boys had apparently missed. A matchbook. I picked it up with a handkerchief, out of respect for everybody's fingerprints. The cover showed the logo of a midtown bar I knew, a place called the Mariner, a dim little harbor for office workers who liked their drinks anonymous. Inside, one match was torn neatly out, the others untouched. I showed it to Kramer. "She hang out at the Mariner?" "We don't know yet," he said, but his eyes sharpened. "You recognize it?" "Yeah. Not exactly a high society club. She told us she kept to herself. Either that was modesty, or she had compartments in her life." "You going to tell Wolfe about the matchbook?" Stebbins asked. "I tell Wolfe everything. He likes it that way." Kramer snorted. "Good. Maybe it'll shake him loose from that chair long enough to be useful." "Don't get your hopes up," I said. "Movement is a sensitive topic with him." By the time I got back to the brownstone, it was after 11. The house had settled into its usual nighttime quiet, Fritz cleaning in the kitchen, the faint hum of traffic outside, and, from upstairs, the ghost of orchid scent drifting down like an exotic alibi. Wolfe was in his chair where I'd left him, a fresh bottle of beer on the table and a look on his face that meant his brain had been doing calisthenics even if the rest of him hadn't budged. "Well?" he demanded as I came in. I gave him the full report, step by step, the apartment layout, the locked door, the bruising on the neck, the single coffee cup, the unfinished phone number impression, the neighbor's story about the whisper, and the tall man under the lamp. Then I handed him the matchbook. He took it between thumb and forefinger, glanced at the logo, and grunted. "Phwee," he said. "She kept to herself, did she? The Mariner. That is not a temple of solitude." "So I gathered," I said. "What do you make of the half-written number? A connection? Or an attempt to sever one?" He leaned back, eyes half closed. "A woman besieged by a whisperer visits me, then is murdered. The whisperer telephones here and declares it too late. That suggests either conceit or mockery. Possibly both. She said she didn't know who he was," I reminded him. "She said she had no enemies," Wolfe replied. "Which we know is false. So we proceed on the assumption that Miss Brooke was keeping something back. Perhaps several things. Kramer thinks you're holding out." "Kramer always thinks I am holding out," Wolfe said. "But he is not entirely wrong. I am holding out, on myself." He drained his beer, set the bottle down, and gave me the look that means a job is about to land in my lap. "We will not," he said slowly, "permit a man who whispers to dictate the terms of engagement. We are already entangled. We will investigate." "Well," I said, "that's a relief. For a minute there, I thought you might prioritize your digestion." "My digestion," he said, "is part of my efficiency. Do not be imbecilic. In the morning, you will go to the Mariner. You will determine Miss Brooke's habits there, companions, quarrels, admirers. You will also inquire at her place of employment. We shall have to see who this woman really was when she was not wringing her hands in my office." "And if the whisper calls again?" I asked. Wolfe's gaze flicked to the phone, then back to me. "Then," he said, "we will listen very carefully. A man who kills with whispers cannot resist hearing his own echo." He closed his eyes, signaling the end of the session. The whisper had taken Elena Brooke. Wolfe had accepted the unpleasant fact that he was now in the game. And somewhere in the city, under a street lamp or in a phone booth, a man who liked to talk too softly was waiting for his next audience. Chapter 3, Suspects with Secrets. The next morning began like any other morning in the brownstone, Wolfe upstairs with his orchids, Fritz muttering lovingly at the stove, and me contemplating the breakfast table and wondering how long before Kramer called to accuse us of ruining his career. All perfectly ordinary, except for the lingering notion that a whisper in the dark had already killed once, and might again. At 9:05, Wolfe descended the stairs with the solemn pace of a man carrying the world's most delicate soufflé. His mood was a shade darker than usual, which for Wolfe is like saying the ocean was slightly wetter today. "Breakfast," he ordered. "Is already here," I said. "You're welcome to thank Fritz and me for maintaining your schedule in these turbulent times." He ignored that and sat. When Wolfe ignores my humor, it means his brain is chewing something harder than Fritz's brioche. After a dignified silence, and half a pot of coffee, he spoke. "You have the day's itinerary." "Yes," I said. "Mariner Bar, workplace, and any friends Elena Brooke collected along the way. Also I brought you the phone company's preliminary report Kramer sent over. Nothing earth-shattering. A few routine calls, one to a pharmacy, one to a clothing shop. And on the evening she visited us, one outgoing call at 6:52 p.m., number incomplete in the record." "That matches the impression on her notepad," Wolfe said. "The interrupted number." "Right. They can't identify the destination. Could be a pay phone, an unlisted line, or someone in the habit of paying their bills in cash." Wolfe scowled. "Unlisted numbers. A plague of anonymity." "We're dealing with a whisperer," I reminded him. "Anonymity is his brand." Pfui. That was my cue to get moving, so I grabbed my hat and coat. The morning sunlight had the chilly sharpness of a new nickel. I waved down a cab on 9th Avenue that looked like its brakes had been replaced with 2 bricks tied together and gave the address of the Mariner. The Mariner at 10:30 a.m. is not designed for polite company. The bartender was polishing glasses with the enthusiasm of a monk polishing bones. The place smelled faintly of old beer, older secrets, and the kind of cigarette smoke that clings to your coat like an uninvited relative. He gave me the once-over. I gave it back. "Morning," I said. "You open?" "If the door's unlocked, we're open," he grunted. "I'm looking for information on one of your regulars. Elena Brooke." He froze for a second, just long enough to register surprise, but then returned to polishing. "Yeah," he said. "I heard. Bad business. So you knew her." "I know faces. Names come and go. She came here a couple times a week. Quiet. Polite. Didn't drink much. Did she meet someone here? A boyfriend? Argument partner? Someone with a whispering hobby?" He barked out a short laugh. "Buddy, the only whispering that happens here is guys telling each other where their wives think they are. But yeah, she talked to someone. Tall guy. Brown coat. Smoked too much. He'd slip in after she arrived and leave 5 minutes after she did. A tall smoker. That matched Mrs. Linsky's street lamp admirer. You know his name?" "Never heard it." She called him you, and he called her you. But he wasn't a stranger. She didn't get that close to strangers. "Close how?" The bartender shrugged. Leaned in when she talked. Didn't smile much. He had a real quiet way about him. Like he was thinking 2 steps ahead in a game only he knew the rules to. "Any arguments?" "Nope." But she was tense. Like she was expecting him to say something she didn't want to hear. And when he didn't show up last Thursday, she sat here nursing a ginger ale for an hour, checking the door every few minutes. Interesting. Last Thursday. That's around when the whispering started. Whispering? His brow climbed. "You mean the guy?" I didn't answer. He didn't press. Instead, he pointed to a small table in the corner. That was her spot. And sometimes, he hesitated. Sometimes she wrote stuff down. What stuff? Don't know. Little slips of paper, torn from a notepad. She'd scribble something, fold it in quarters, and tuck it into her purse. I saw her throw one away once. Wastebasket still around? He grinned humorlessly. We haven't cleaned it since last night. You're welcome to treasure hunt. I went over. Among the wrappers, napkins, and one tragic pretzel remnant, I found a crumpled piece of paper. I flattened it. Just a few words, written in hurried pencil. He knows. No more time. Thursday. I pocketed it for Wolfe. Thanks, I told the bartender. If the tall smoker comes back, let me know. He won't. Why not? He only came when she did. My next stop was the advertising agency where Elena worked, a sleek mid-century office with chrome furniture and enough perfume in the air to fend off an entire cavalry charge. A blonde receptionist with cheekbones sharp enough to slice bread greeted me with the warmth usually reserved for overdue invoices. Yes, she asked. Archie Goodwin. I'd like to speak with someone who knew Elena Brooke. Her face softened a little. Oh, yes. Terrible news. I'll get Mr. Harford. Mr. Harford turned out to be the agency's creative director, stocky, balding, and wearing a tie that looked like it had been designed by a blind trapeze artist. His eyes were red-rimmed, not from grief. If I guessed right, the scotch bottle on his desk was half empty, and it wasn't even noon. I'll help however I can, he said, settling behind his desk. Elena was one of our best layout artists. Did she have trouble with anyone here? He made a face. Trouble? No. Attention? Yes. From who? That depends on your definition of attention. He leaned back. She had a former suitor who still hung around. Name's Alan Reeve. Copywriter. Mild, polite, zero backbone to speak of. But smitten with her in the manner of a puppy with a shoe. Did she reciprocate? Harford snorted. Elena didn't believe in reciprocation. She believed in boundaries. Anyone else? There was an art director, Lou Calder. Married, which didn't stop him from thinking his charm could melt steel. She rebuffed him. Hard. But he kept trying. So we have one admirer with no spine, and one with too much ego, I summarized. Nice symmetry. Harford sighed. Look, Mr. Goodwin, she was scared. I noticed it last week. She'd jump when the phone rang. She asked if she could work from home a few days. I said yes. His eyes clouded. I didn't ask why. Did she mention a man who smoked? Tall, quiet. Harford frowned. No. But she did step out to make phone calls. Long ones. She'd return pale. Once I heard her say, "You promised." But I didn't hear the rest. That word, promised, tugged at a thread I'd been collecting. Did she go out Thursday? I asked. About when she was here last? Thursday, yes. She told me she needed the afternoon off. Said it was personal. And personal had become fatal. I retrieved contact information for Reeve and Calder, thanked Harford, and headed out onto the street. Midtown was humming, taxis roaring, businessmen elbowing past, neon signs blinking like they were making fun of someone. It occurred to me we now had a jealous ex-suitor. A married flirt with motive for silence. A mysterious tall smoker who shadowed her. An unfinished phone number. A whispered threat on a locked floor. And a woman who kept secrets even from her own terror. A whisperer doesn't operate without leverage. And Elena had enough hidden corners to be a full-time hobby for one. I grabbed a taxi back to the brownstone. Inside, the air had that floral heat from Wolfe's orchids, sweet, dense, and just exotic enough to let you know a genius lived here and meant it. Wolfe was in his chair, brows knitted, beer close at hand. Well, he demanded. I gave him the report. All of it, the tall smoker, the note from the wastebasket, the two co-workers with motives, the trembling office dynamics, and the impression that Elena had been trying to outrun something she wouldn't name. Wolfe listened with one eye closed. When I finished, he drummed his fingers. Confound it, he muttered. She wove a web so tight that extracting the first thread will require delicacy. Meaning I get to play spider? Meaning you will speak to these men tomorrow, he said. In the meantime, this note. He held up the crumpled scrap from the Mariner. He knows. No more time. Thursday. Wolfe's mouth tightened. She knew the danger, yet she came to me only yesterday. Why? That's your department, I said. Mine is legwork. Then perform it, he said, lifting his beer. This whisperer is either clever or deranged. Possibly both. And men of that ilk require vigilance. He paused. And Archie. Yes. Be careful. A man who whispers might shout when cornered. I grinned. Don't worry. If he whispers at me, I'll whisper back. Wolfe rolled his eyes and took a drink. But underneath all that composure, I could tell he was troubled. Very troubled. And the whisper killer wasn't done with us yet. Chapter 4, The Whisper Strikes Again. By Wednesday evening, the brownstone had begun to feel like an air raid shelter waiting for a bomb that insisted on whispering before it dropped. Wolfe was in his chair with the stubbornness of a mountain, I was on the phone sorting through the day's calls, and Fritz was in the kitchen making a veal dish that smelled suspiciously like it might convert a man from crime-solving to monastic cuisine. At exactly 6:01 p.m., the phone rang. I picked it up. Goodwin. A low breath. Smooth, deliberate. A whisper formed, not quite a word, not quite silence. I stiffened. You again. More breath. A faint hiss. Then, tonight. Click. I stared at the receiver as if expecting it to explain itself. Wolfe said, I presume it was our whisperer. He's broadening his vocabulary. One word this time. Tonight. Wolfe's face, that monumental arrangement of brow, cheeks, and lips sculpted in contempt for anything that disrupted routine, shifted from annoyance to something darker. Archie, he said, call Kramer. I blinked. You want to call Kramer preemptively? That's like inviting a thunderstorm into the parlor. Do it. If a man announces, tonight, he is declaring the future. Murderers who declare the future often attempt to fulfill it. He was right. I dialed Kramer. He answered sounding like he'd been chewing a brick. What? Goodwin here. We just received a call. If this is about your car warranty, save it. It wasn't a warranty. It was a whisper. One word, tonight. A pause. Then, stay put. He hung up. Wolfe lifted an eyebrow. Predictable. Shall I put out beer? I asked. Kramer drinks like he's auditioning for a flood. Wolfe grunted. Beer is not for guests. And there goes our hospitality award. Before I could sit, the bell rang. Kramer doesn't believe in wasting time when threats are on the menu. I opened the door to find him, Stebbins, and a blast of cold air. Kramer pushed inside. All right, Wolfe. Tell me everything. We did. Whisper. One word. Tonight. No number trace. Could be a crank, Stebbins said. Could be, I said. But our crank already killed one woman just to warm up his vocal cords. Kramer blew out a frustrated puff of cigar smoke. We've been checking every male contact Brooke had, co-workers, neighbors, old flame, plumber, mailman, everyone. Nobody stands out. Your usual investigation into humanity's disappointments, Wolfe muttered. Kramer swung toward him. You want to contribute, or just decorate that chair? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Archie will be interviewing suspects tomorrow. That may yield answers your dragnets have not. Kramer threw up a hand. Fine. But tonight, I want you two ready. If he calls again, stall him. Keep him talking. We'll trace it. Not possible, Wolfe snapped. He whispers. Low. Brief. Purposefully. So improvise. Kramer barked. Wolfe closed his eyes, his version of telling Kramer to stop existing for a moment. 20 minutes later, they left, and the brownstone quieted again. Archie, Wolfe said after a stretch of silence, I would very much appreciate if this whispering lunatic would limit his disruptions to daylight hours. I'll draft a polite request, I said. You can sign it. We resumed our stations. Dinner came and went. The hours dragged like they were pulling a dead mule behind them. Around 10:30 I brewed coffee, not for Wolfe, who sees caffeine after dinner as a personal insult, but for myself. Nothing happened. No whisper. No thud at the door. Just the ticking of the office clock and Wolfe's slow, rhythmic breathing, his thinking breathing, the kind that told me he was constructing mental scaffolding he wouldn't tell me about yet. Then at 11:14 p.m., the phone exploded into sound again. My pulse jumped. Wolfe did not move a muscle. I grabbed it. Goodwin. No whisper. No breath. Instead, a voice. Low, trembling, human. Is this Nero Wolfe's office? The disappointment hit harder than I like to admit. Ordinary fear suddenly felt far too ordinary. Yes, I said. Who's this? My name is Henry Ulbrichtson. I need help. Something terrible. The phone died. Just gone. Cut mid-syllable. Wolfe opened his eyes. Well. He wasn't whispering. Somebody named Henry Ulbrichtson. Said he needed help. Then the line died. Call him back. I would, I said, except he didn't leave a number. Wolfe scowled. Confound it. I was about to continue when the bell rang again, this time not ours. A siren outside. A faint cluster of voices down the block. Wolfe's brows knitted. Archie. See. See what? Whatever is causing that infernal clamor. I threw on my coat and headed out. The cold night slapped me like it owed me rent. The noise was coming from our end of the street, maybe 7 houses down. I hurried toward it. 2 police cars. A stretcher. Neighbors huddled in nightclothes. And I heard it. Name's Ulbrichtson. My stomach sank. I pushed through the small crowd until I found a uniform I recognized. Hey, I said. Goodwin. What happened? He jerked a thumb toward the stretcher. Call came in around 11:20. Neighbor heard a commotion. By the time we got here, dead. Ulbrichtson. Middle-aged, thinning hair, glasses bent on one hinge. How? I asked quietly. Strangled, the cop said grimly. No forced entry. No weapon. Same as your other case. I stared at him. Did anyone hear anything? The cop nodded. Yeah. Same detail as before. Neighbor says just before the time of death, she heard a whisper. Right outside this guy's door. A cold breeze worked its way down my spine. I knew then what Wolfe would say before I even returned to the brownstone. When I stepped inside, he was where I'd left him, slightly more annoyed, if possible, but still an immovable boulder in his armchair. Well, he demanded. Second victim. Henry Ulbrichtson. Strangled. No forced entry. Whisper heard beforehand. Wolfe inhaled sharply through his nose. That man telephoned us minutes before his death, he said. Minutes. Yeah. He wished to hire me. Seems so. Wolfe's eyes darkened. This whisperer is dabbling in provocation. A distasteful trait. He's escalating. Or showing off. Possibly both, Wolfe said. We held silence for a moment. Not comfortable silence. Heavy silence. The kind that moves into your house and steals your best chair. Finally, Wolfe spoke again. Archie. Yeah. Tomorrow, you will interview all parties connected to Miss Brooke and Mr. Ulbrichtson. There must be connective tissue. People do not die in parallel unless someone intends a pattern. Or a message. Yes, he said. A message addressed to me, evidently. Which is impertinent. Impertinent seems mild. Wolfe closed his eyes, thinking. I require the dossiers on all tenants in Ulbrichson's building. Speak with the super. The neighbors. Anyone who heard this whisper. We must determine how our killer enters undetected and why whispering is his chosen habit. I nodded. But Archie, he added, opening his eyes again, you will take care. Twice now he has announced death before committing it. If he whispers your name, I will be most seriously displeased. I grinned. Don't worry. If he tries, I'll talk louder. Pfui. He reached for a fresh beer, the glass clinking. Outside, somewhere in the cold autumn dark, a killer was walking home, quietly, breath by breath, word by whispered word. And tomorrow, I'd be walking straight into the path of his silence. Chapter 5, A Thread of Breath. By Thursday morning, New York looked the same as it always does, taxis snarling, steam rising from manholes like impatient dragons, and pedestrians rushing as if the sidewalks were on fire. But inside my ribs, something had shifted. 2 people dead, 2 whispers preceding the act, and the latest victim had phoned us mere minutes before getting himself strangled. If I were paranoid, I'd have felt personally insulted. Nero Wolfe, however, was beyond insult. He was irritated. And irritation, in Wolfe, is a catalyst more efficient than dynamite. He finished his breakfast, 2 shirred eggs, crisp bacon, toasted brioche, wiped his lips with ritual precision, then shoved his chair back half an inch. Archie, you have your assignment. Which part? I asked. The part where I track down secrets. The part where I interview men who wish I'd fall down an elevator shaft. Or the part where I try not to get whispered at. All of it, Wolfe said. But first, the files Kramer sent over last night. The telephone complaints. I slid the thin stack across the desk. Kramer had forwarded summaries of anonymous caller complaints filed in the last month, mostly cranks, obscene callers, wrong numbers, and people convinced the telephone company was secretly surveilling them. In New York, this qualifies as normal. Wolfe put on his reading glasses like he was preparing to dissect a frog. HRRM, he muttered. Here. 2 complaints from Miss Brooke, filed 3 weeks ago. Whispering calls, late night. No caller ID, obviously. A 3rd complaint from Mr. Ulbrichson, filed 8 days ago, also whispers, same description. Consistent, I said. Same guy. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Not necessarily. Whispering is not a proprietary skill. But the timing suggests an expanding pattern. First Brooke. Then Ulbrichson. And next? I asked. That is what we must determine before he decides for us. He removed the glasses. You will visit each place today. Find the nexus. You want me to find a whisper's point of origin? Archie, he said irritably, a whisper is merely breath shaped by intent. Trace the intent. Discover the path. Go. That was my cue to vacate the brownstone. Fritz handed me a sandwich wrapped in wax paper with the pitying look of a man sending a soldier to war. Wolfe waved me off like I was a mosquito he'd grown fond of. Outside, the cold air knifed at my cheeks. Perfect weather for chasing shadows. 1. The super who knew too little. I headed first to Mr. Ulbrichson's building. The super, Mr. Feldman, was shorter than I expected and built like a stove, square, solid, radiating heat from annoyance. Yes, I heard about your friend, he said when I introduced myself. Terrible business. Second one in the neighborhood, too. You knew Ulbrichson? I asked. He paid rent on time. That's all I ask of a man. Any visitors? Only one I ever noticed. Tall fellow. Brown coat. Smoker. Well, well. Our tall smoker again. Frequent? Not really. Last saw him about 10 days ago. Did Ulbrichtson seem bothered by something? Anyone? Feldman hesitated. Look, he was nervous lately. Kept checking the hallway. Asked if I'd seen anyone hanging around. Said someone was calling him late at night. Whispering. His eyes flicked toward the stairwell. He asked me to change his locks. I didn't get to it before, well. Anyone suspicious around? Yes, Feldman said slowly. A man asking questions. Not you. Someone else. He came 2 days ago. What did he want? Said he was concerned about Henry. Wouldn't give a name. Just asked what hours Henry kept. If he got visitors. If he'd filed complaints. What did he look like? Average height. Dark hair. Intense eyes. A little, too polite. Sound like a whisperer. Feldman snorted. No. Whispering takes confidence. I jotted down a description. A new player. Great. 2, Alan Reeve, spineless but informative. Next stop, Alan Reeve, the office puppy in love with Elena Brooke. When he opened the door, he looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days and had spent the time wrestling his conscience and losing. Mr. Goodwin, he asked. Come in. He lived alone, in an apartment with too many books and not enough dusting. How well did you know Miss Brooke? I asked. He wrung his hands. Too well, maybe. Or not well enough. A poet, I said. Great. He ignored the sarcasm. She told me someone was threatening her. Whispering phone calls. Notes. I told her to go to the police. She said she couldn't. Why not? He hesitated. She said the man knew things. Personal things. If she reported him, he'd make it worse. Did she say who he was? No. But she was afraid. She said she'd made a mistake a long time ago and it had caught up with her. That matched something she'd hinted to Wolfe. Did you see her last Thursday? I asked. He flinched. We had lunch. She was distracted. Said she had to meet someone later. Someone she hoped would end it. The tall smoker. He blinked. Tall smoker. I filled him in. No, Reeve said firmly. That wasn't him. She said the person she was meeting was quiet. Controlled. Frightening without raising his voice. That describes every married man hiding an affair, I said. Speaking of, how about Lou Calder? Reeve stiffened. I don't like Calder. Many people don't. He and Elena argued last month. He wanted her to quit. She refused. Quit what? I asked. Reeve paled. I don't know. She just said she promised someone. Another thread. Another knot. 3, Lou Calder, charming as a broken bottle. Calder's office was in a building with polished floors and secretaries who looked genetically engineered to glare. Calder himself was tall, handsome in a cheap magazine way, and wore a suit priced loudly but chosen poorly. Miss Brooke, he said, leaning back, was a talented artist. And if you're here to imply something, I'd advise you to tread lightly. Light's my specialty, I said. Care to explain your argument last month? She refused a proposition, he said airily. A business proposition? He smirked. Everything is business. Did you whisper at her? He sat upright. What? Never mind, I said. Did she ever mention a man calling her? Yes, he said reluctantly. I told her to ignore him. Why? Because he sounded pathetic. You heard him? No. Her description made him sound like a child hiding under a bed. Helpful. Did Ulbrichtsen ever cross her path? Calder frowned. Never heard the name. Wrong tone. Too quick. Filing that away. 4. Back to the brownstone, and a theory brewing. By the time I got back, the city lights had blinked on and the cold evening air carried the smell of rain and pretzels. Wolfe was in his chair, orchid satisfied upstairs, beer at hand. Well, he asked. I gave him everything, Feldman's mystery visitor, Reeves' confessions, Calder's arrogance, the repeated appearances of the tall smoker, and the thread tying Brooke and Ulbrichtsen via whispered calls and fear of some secret mistake. Wolfe folded his hands. We now have a matrix, he said. Great, I said. Does the matrix talk? Silence, he said. Miss Brooke's note, he knows. No more time. Ulbrichtsen's anxiety. Both received whispers. Both attempted to act before death. Both contacted me. That suggests. A common trigger, I said. Yes. Something occurred days ago. A revelation, a threat, a deadline. This whisperer is not random. He selects targets with connection. I nodded. Then we find the connection. Precisely. He leaned back, eyes narrowing. Archie, he said slowly, we are approaching the fulcrum. But before I proceed, I require further facts. Which ones? All of them, he said. Every whisper, every acquaintance, every lie. That was Wolfe, ask for the sun and complain it's too warm. He closed his eyes. Bring Saul in tomorrow. We require his particular finesse. And get the full histories on Brooke and Ulbrichtsen. Anything else? I asked. Yes. Wolfe opened one eye. If the whisperer telephones again, I should keep my charm modest and my ears open. No. Stall him. I need breath, Archie. Breath reveals identity. Perfect. We were now hunting a killer through whispers and breath patterns. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the windows. Somewhere, in the city's dim stairwells or phone booths, the whisper killer waited, quiet, patient, and ready. And Wolfe, finally, was ready for him. Chapter 6, A Trap Set in Silence. By Friday morning the brownstone felt like a submarine running low on air, quiet, pressurized, and full of the suspicion that something deadly was circling just outside the hull. Wolfe was on edge, which meant he was even more immovable than usual. If Mount Everest ever developed irritability, it would be exactly like working with him. He sat in his chair after breakfast, glaring at the world as if daring it to interrupt. I stood at my desk, sorting papers in the way you do when you know a storm's coming and the best you can do is hold on to something. Finally he said, Archie. One word, but heavy. Yes, sir. We must exert initiative. I blinked. Didn't know we kept that in stock. He ignored me. The whisperer is emboldened. He telephones here. He chooses victims who reach for assistance. This is a man who thrives on control. So we must take it from him. I leaned my hip against the desk. Which means? A trap. Oh good, I said. I was afraid you'd suggest a knitting circle. Wolfe settled deeper into his chair. The killer knows you are my agent. He knows both victims attempted to involve me. The pattern suggests he monitors our movements or communications. He may be listening, watching, or receiving information indirectly. Therefore, I become bait, I finished. Yes. He frowned. I dislike it. Your mobility is an asset I require. But the trap necessitates a lure. Well, I said, if my boyish charm will help catch a murderer, I guess I can endure the attention. Wolfe's eyes narrowed, unimpressed with my bravery. Be serious, Archie. This man strangles with his hands. He whispers to disorient. His psychology is deliberate, methodical, and intimate. Great, I said. Just what I wanted, an admirer with a hobby. He drummed his fingers once, a rare display of agitation. We shall inform Kramer that you will be conducting visible inquiries around the locations linked to both victims. You will frequent the Mariner. Walk Brooks' usual path home. Visit Ulbrichson's building. Appear preoccupied. Distractible. In other words, look like someone who knows more than he should and might spill it. Precisely. And you expect our guy to nibble? No, Wolfe said. I expect him to strike. 1. A walk into the lion's mouth. By noon I was on the street with nothing but a trench coat, a notebook, and the sense that Wolfe had just tossed me into the deep end while staying dry on the deck. The Mariner bar was first. I made a point of ordering a ginger ale, Elena's drink, and sitting at her usual table. The bartender recognized me and nodded. Back for more treasure? Just ambience, I said. And possibly a murderer watching from a dim corner. He grunted. Well, if he's here, I hope he buys something. I stayed an hour. No whisperer. No tall smoker. No suspicious men with intense eyes and a strangling grip. Just a regular lunchtime crowd, clerks, salesmen, 2 women arguing about who owed for last night's cab. I left, strolling down the sidewalk in what I hoped was an enticingly vulnerable manner. The cold air gnawed the edges of my coat. Every passing figure looked like a potential strangler. New Yorkers don't lack intensity. My next stop was Elena Brooks' building. Mrs. Linsky saw me through her peephole and opened her door a crack. Oh, it's you again, she said. You look like you're expecting someone to jump out at you. I prefer my surprises without strangulation, I said. She sniffed. I heard footsteps on the stairs yesterday. Slow ones. Couldn't place them. Tall. Short. Whispering. Sounded cautious, she said. Whoever it was didn't want to be noticed. Not helpful, but atmospheric. I made a show of inspecting the stairwell, the doorframe, the corridor. Anyone watching would assume I knew something. Which was exactly what I wanted. 2. New information, new shadows. At Ulbrichson's building, Feldman the super was waiting. You again, he grumbled. Popular place. Mind if I take a look at the basement? He blinked. Why the basement? People who whisper usually like quiet. He shrugged. Suit yourself. The basement was dim, full of pipes, laundry machines, and the faint smell of detergent and lost ambitions. I saw nothing suspicious except a set of scuff marks near the back door, parallel lines, like something heavy had been dragged. Feldman, I called, what's behind this door? Old service exit. Mostly locked. Leads to the alley. Who has the key? Only me. And Henry. Henry Ulbrichson. Yeah. He used it sometimes. Said he liked fresh air. Which begged a question, if someone wanted to leave unseen, a service exit was handy. Anyone else know about this door? He hesitated. Well, someone asked. Who? That same polite stranger from earlier. The one with the intense eyes. That gave me pause. Our mysterious stranger was persistent. I finished my circuit of the building, making sure any lurking killer saw me being thorough. Then I walked back toward the brownstone, hoping I'd picked up a shadow. I hadn't. The shadows were all in my head. 3. Saul's findings. Saul Panzer came by at 3. Saul is one of the few people Wolfe trusts more than he trusts gravity. If I ever get murdered, Saul is the guy I'd want hunting my killer. That's high praise and depressing to think about. Wolfe demanded a report. Saul said calmly, I shadowed the tall smoker you described. My eyebrows shot up. You found him? Yes. He frequents a tobacconist near 57th, name's Victor Dane. He followed Miss Brooke from work several times. Stalker? I asked. Maybe. But there's more, Saul said. He also visited Ulbrichtsen's building 2 days before the murder. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Did he speak with Ulbrichtsen? No. He stood outside, smoking. Watching. Waiting. Suspicious, Wolfe murmured. Saul nodded. Suspicious enough that I dug further. Dane works for a private courier service. Delivers envelopes. Sometimes cash. Blackmail courier? I suggested. Possibly. Wolfe frowned. Follow him more. Discreetly. If he leads to our whisperer, we must not spook him. Saul nodded and left. 4. The trap prepares. Evening settled over Manhattan like a thick coat of dark wool. Wolfe insisted I remain visible in the office, a shining target for any phone call. At 8:12 p.m., the caller obliged. The phone rang. A slow, soft ring that seemed more menacing than a shout. I picked up. Goodwin. A whisper. Barely audible. Then, you're looking for me. My grip tightened. Wolfe leaned forward, not moving closer, just more intensely still. Yeah, I said softly. I'm looking. A slow, quiet breath on the line. Stop. Not my style. Stop, he repeated, or someone else, tonight. Who? I demanded, stalling like Wolfe asked. Silence. A breath. A faint, chilling laugh. Click. I lowered the phone. He didn't give me much. He gave you everything, Wolfe said grimly. Someone else will die tonight. Unless we pick the right person first. Precisely. He closed his eyes, thinking. Archie, prepare your coat. We are no longer reacting. We are acting. I like the sound of that, I said. You coming? No, Wolfe said. My presence would diminish our chances. But you will make the Whisperer reveal his next move. How? By going to the Mariner again, Wolfe said. And making certain your interest in the victims is unmistakable. You want me murdered? No, he snapped. I want him provoked. He opened his eyes. Go, Archie. Tonight the silent man must break his pattern. 5. Walking into the storm. The Mariner was dimmer than usual. The bartender gave me a look that said, back again. Planning on tipping this time. I ordered another ginger ale. Sat at Elena's table. Opened my notebook dramatically. And waited. A figure entered, tall, brown coat, cigarette glowing like an accusation. Victor Dane. He froze when he saw me. Then he turned, too quickly, and slipped out the door. I stood. Followed. The cold wind cut like razors. Dane hurried down the block. I kept pace. He turned a corner. I followed. Just in time to hear a whisper behind me. Not breath on a phone. Real breath. Close. Stop. And then. Something moved in the dark. But that, as Nero Wolfe would say, must await elaboration. Chapter 7, The Whisper Unmasked, Almost. The moment I heard that whisper behind me, close enough to chill my ear, I did what any responsible investigator would do. I ducked, pivoted, and swung an elbow backward hard enough to make a chiropractor wince. It connected with something solid. A grunt followed. I spun, expecting to see a tall smoker or a ghost with a nicotine habit. Instead, a man in a dark overcoat stumbled back, clutching his chest where I'd landed my greeting. He was average height, dark hair, intense eyes. I recognized the description instantly, Feldman's, too polite stranger, the unknown man asking about Ulbrichtsen and the service exit. He looked startled, annoyed, and not even slightly stranglerish at the moment. You startled me, he gasped. You whispered at me, I countered. I was calling out, he insisted. I saw you following that man, Victor Dane, and you were in danger. In danger from what? I asked. From him. That was a new one. Dane, the courier, was apparently suspected by this gentleman. Either that, or this guy was a lousy liar with great timing. Who are you? I demanded. Walter Rendell, he said breathlessly. I tried to tell Mr. Wolfe, 3 days ago. I came by but he wouldn't see me. Try me, I said. He swallowed. I've been following Dane. He's been paid to deliver blackmail money. Brooke paid. So did Ulbrichtsen. I think Dane's working with the Whisperer. Or is the Whisperer? It was too neat. Too helpful. But there wasn't time to untangle it in a dark alley with traffic rumbling and the threat of murder hovering like a nervous pigeon. You, I said, pointing a finger at his chest, are going to the brownstone. Right now. But I. No buts, I said. If you sneeze, I want Wolfe to hear it. I marched him back to 9th Avenue, flagged a cab, shoved him inside, and instructed the driver. Then I walked home myself, keeping to the bright side of the street and mentally rehearsing all the ways this could go wrong. Spoiler, there were dozens. The gathering storm. When I pushed open the office door, Wolfe was in his chair with the posture of a pharaoh carved in obsidian. Fritz had just removed the dinner tray, and Wolfe had a fresh bottle of beer breathing beside him. His eyes flicked up as if judging whether my return was a triumph or disaster. Archie, he said. Explain. I did. Every detail. Victor Dane's exit. Walter Rendell's whisper. His confession, his tailing of Dane, his theory. Wolfe's face remained unmoved, but his fingers curled once, like a cat about to pounce mentally. Saul's report contradicts nothing, Wolfe said when I finished. He confirmed Dane's suspicious movements but not his purpose. Rendell claims blackmail, I said. And that Dane's part of it. He claims many things, Wolfe replied. Not all true, not all false. What do you make of him? Wolfe snorted. A man who whispers in an alley does not endear himself to me. That was fair. He gestured. Show him in. I opened the door to the front room. Fritz had been entertaining Rendell with warm tea and a look that said he suspected the man of being a pickpocket. Rendell stepped into the office with the posture of someone entering a dentist's drill. Wolfe gave him a single, monumental glance. Sit. Rendell sat. Now, Wolfe said, tell us everything. But do so without embellishment, elision, or cowardice. I have a limited tolerance for lies. Rendell swallowed so loudly I heard it from across the room. Miss Brooke, he began shakily, worked at my sister's firm before she changed jobs. She confided in me, years ago, that she'd made a mistake. Someone had approached her about it recently. She wouldn't say who. Wolfe raised a thick eyebrow. Your connection to Ulbrichtsen? I didn't know him. But I found out he'd filed a whispering call complaint the same week Elena last spoke to me. I connected the two. Connected, Wolfe repeated dryly, or contrived. Rendell flushed. I was trying to help her. And when she died, I tried to warn Ulbrichtsen. He wouldn't see me. I went to his building. He was dead the next night. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. Why did you not bring this to me immediately? I tried. Rendell burst out. You wouldn't see me. Wolfe sniffed. You arrived during my orchid hours. That was ill-chosen. I coughed. Rendell looked like he wanted to strangle someone, not necessarily himself. So, Wolfe said, you believe Victor Dane is the Whisperer? Yes, Rendell insisted. He followed Elena. He visited Ulbrichson's building. He earns money by delivering envelopes. And he smokes constantly, he takes breaks every 30 minutes. He's always near a phone booth. Wolfe steepled his fingers. Interesting. But insufficient. Mr. Panzer also followed Dane. He observed nothing overtly criminal. That's because he's clever, Rendell muttered. Or someone wants us to think he is, Wolfe countered. I shot a look at Wolfe. That meant he wasn't buying Rendell entirely, but wasn't dismissing him either. That alone made Rendell special. Most people get dismissed faster than a losing boxer. The summons. Wolfe finally waved Rendell off, instructing Fritz to give him brandy and solitude. When the door shut, Wolfe turned to me. Archie, telephone Inspector Kramer. I blinked. You actually want Kramer here? Willingly. Yes. And instruct him to bring Dane. And Calder. And Reeve. And the Super Feldman. And Mrs. Linsky. And Rendell. I raised an eyebrow. That's practically the entire cast. Exactly, Wolfe said. You're ready to name the Whisperer. No, he said, but I am ready to pry loose the truth. And for that, the board must be set. Kramer arrived half an hour later, trailing cigar smoke and irritation in equal measure. This better be good, Wolfe, he barked. Dragging half the city here at midnight? It is not midnight, Wolfe said. And you may sit. Kramer didn't sit. He glared. Wolfe shrugged and drank his beer. The suspects arrived one by one, filling the brownstone like a casting call for anxious citizens. Dane came last, glancing around with twitchy nerves and smelling like smoke and fear. This a circus, he muttered. No, I said. The circus has elephants. We just have Wolfe. One by one, the assembled group took seats or hovered awkwardly. Wolfe waited until the room settled, then lifted one hand. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, you are brought here because one among you is connected intimately to 2 murders, and to a series of whispered threats. Gasps. Dane swallowed. Calder scowled. Reeve trembled. Rendell stiffened. Mrs. Linsky clutched her purse like a shield. Wolfe continued. Miss Elena Brooke and Mr. Henry Ulbrichson were murdered by someone who used whispering as a tactic, both psychological and strategic. A whisper hides identity. A whisper disorients. A whisper precedes death. The room fell silent. And now, Wolfe said, I will present the contradictions. He pointed a finger at Dane. You followed Miss Brooke, but claimed no knowledge of her associates. Dane bristled. I told the cops, I delivered something for her once. That's all. Wolfe turned to Calder. You argued with her. More than once. Calder flushed. That's no crime. Reeve piped up timidly. She confided in me more than she did with others. Exactly, Wolfe said, yet you remain curiously ignorant of her fears. Reeve looked ready to faint. Then Wolfe looked at Rendell. And you, he said softly, knew far too much far too soon. Rendell stiffened. I was trying to help. Perhaps, Wolfe said. But perhaps not. Kramer stepped forward. If you know who the killer is, Wolfe. Wolfe held up a hand. I do not know. A collective exhale. But I do know, he continued, that the killer slipped tonight. Every head turned toward me. That was uncomfortable, I prefer being admired from a distance. Wolfe said, when the Whisperer ambushed Mr. Goodwin in the alley, the whisper was, imperfect. Imperfect? Stebbins grunted. Wolfe nodded. A flaw. A trait. A verbal habit. He scanned the room. And one among you shares it. His eyes glinted. And before this evening ends, I will identify it. The room went cold. Several suspects looked ready to bolt. Kramer reached for his handcuffs. Wolfe leaned forward, massive and immovable. "Archie," he said, "secure the doors." I did. The Whisper killer was in the room, and Wolfe was about to unmask him, but not quite yet. Chapter 8, Beer, Orchids and Closure. If you've never watched Nero Wolfe prepare for the verbal equivalent of dropping the atom bomb, then you have never truly appreciated the majesty of human irritation combined with genius. Wolfe sat in his oversized chair like a mountain preparing to avalanche, the room packed with suspects blinking in various degrees of guilt, fear, and digestive discomfort. Inspector Kramer stood near the door, arms folded, cigar under serious internal strain. Stebbins hovered like a bulldog waiting to be let off the leash. I took my usual position near Wolfe's desk, ready to pounce, punch, or file paperwork, whatever the moment required. Wolfe cleared his throat. That tiny rumble made the room flinch. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "you are all here because you intersect the lives of Elena Brooke and Henry Ulbrichtson. Two people who died not by chance, but by calculated murder, preceded, in both cases, by a whisper." Everyone tensed at that word. A whisper, Wolfe continued, is not merely sound. It is intention clothed in secrecy. Our killer used whispering because he wished to be close. To dominate. To terrify. And because whispering hides his most inconvenient trait. He let that hang in the air like a chandelier full of dynamite. I looked around the room. Rendell stared pale-faced at the floor. Calder shifted in his seat, trying to look innocent. Reeve wrung his hands so hard I worried he might disassemble them. Dane sniffed, cigarette withdrawn behind his ear like a tiny white flag. Mrs. Linsky clutched her purse, waiting for the apocalypse. Wolfe went on. Miss Brooke received anonymous whispering calls for weeks. So did Ulbrichtson. Both believed the caller knew something. Both filed complaints. Both panicked. Both reached for help, Miss Brooke to me, Ulbrichtson to the police and then me. A pause. And both were strangled shortly afterward, with no forced entry. Kramer grunted. Get to the point, Wolfe. I will when I am ready, Wolfe snapped. Stebbins winced. Kramer bit the cigar. Wolfe gestured toward Victor Dane. Mr. Dane appears guilty. He followed Miss Brooke. He visited Ulbrichtsen's building. He smokes incessantly. He lingers near phone booths. Suspicious behavior worthy of a second-rate villain. Dane straightened, offended. I deliver envelopes for a living, that's all. Yes, Wolfe said, blackmail envelopes. The room exploded into murmurs. Dane sputtered. Kramer slammed a hand against the desk. Wolfe. I said blackmail envelopes, Wolfe continued calmly. I did not say he blackmailed anyone. He was paid to deliver packages, entirely ignorant of their contents. He is a pawn, not a king. Dane sagged in relief, then glared at Rendell as if reconsidering his entire life. Wolfe's eyes shifted to Calder. You, Mr. Calder, argued with Miss Brooke. You wished her to quit something she refused. You had opportunity. You had motive. But not the necessary temperament. Temperament? Calder snapped. Yes, Wolfe said. The Whisper killer is patient. Precise. Invisible. You are none of those things. I smothered a grin. Wolfe turned to Alan Reeve, who looked ready to melt into a puddle. You loved her. You feared for her. But you lacked spine, and more importantly, you lacked knowledge. She kept secrets from you, Mr. Reeve, because she knew you could not protect them. Reeve choked on a sob. And so, Wolfe continued, we discard the romantic, the bully, and the courier. 3 suspects remain. Every eye swiveled. Mrs. Linsky, Wolfe said, is guilty of nothing except a fondness for eavesdropping and late-night cocoa. She nodded vigorously. Mr. Feldman, the building superintendent, had keys and access. But your temperament is even less suited to whispering anonymity than Mr. Calder's. You complain too loudly. Feldman muttered under his breath. And that leaves, Wolfe said, you. His finger came down like a gavel onto one man. Walter Rendell. The room froze. Rendell blinked. Me? Mr. Wolfe, I came to help. No, Wolfe said sharply. You came to monitor. To mislead. To direct suspicion toward Victor Dane. You whispered behind Mr. Goodwin in the alley, deliberately, hoping to appear harmless yet concerned. You invented connections between victims you barely knew. And you claimed you tried to warn Ulbrichtson. Wolfe leaned forward. Yet you had no reason to know he was in danger unless you were the caller. Rendell opened his mouth. Closed it. Swallowed. Wolfe continued mercilessly. Your fatal mistake occurred in that alley. When you whispered, stop. You pronounced the S sound with a faint hiss, a sibilant slur. Wolfe tapped his lips. Both Miss Brooke and Mr. Ulbrichtson complained repeatedly that their tormentor had a distinctive whisper, soft, sibilant, like breath escaping around the edges of teeth. A rare speech habit. Rendell paled. And you, Mr. Rendell, share that flaw. Twice tonight, you whispered in Mr. Goodwin's presence. Twice, he heard that same sibilant hiss. I blinked. Wolfe was right. I hadn't even noticed it consciously until he said it, but the whisper in the alley and Rendell's voice matched like fingerprints on sound waves. Rendell stood, trembling. This is absurd. Circumstantial. Wolfe raised a hand. Additionally, he said, you claimed Miss Brooke confided in you about a mistake. Yet her co-workers, people she trusted far more, knew nothing of the sort. She was discreet by nature. Why, then, tell you? Rendell's eyes darted like trapped animals do just before they try something stupid. Because, Wolfe said softly, you were the mistake. Gasps. A dropped purse. Kramer's cigar popped like a firecracker. You blackmailed her, Wolfe went on. Something from her past, something she feared, gave you leverage. When Ulbrichtson discovered similar leverage against you, you silenced him as you silenced her. And when both attempted to reach me, you panicked. You could not allow any thread to reach my hands. Rendell's breath came shallow. Whisper thin. Wolfe's voice dropped to a low thunder. You whispered to them before killing them because whispering was your method of control, psychological warfare from a coward who feared speaking aloud. Rendell lunged toward the door. He got exactly 2 steps. Kramer hit him like a freight train with a badge. Stebbins and I piled on for good measure. Rendell shrieked, a thin, breathy sound, and went limp. Kramer cuffed him with relish. Wolfe, he growled, I don't know how you do it, but I swear I'll demand an audit of your brain one of these days. You would need a warrant, Wolfe said coolly. Kramer dragged Rendell toward the door. Come on, whisper boy. Let's see how softly you can murmur in a holding cell. The door slammed behind them. Aftermath. Fritz brought Wolfe his victory beer like a priest offering sacrament. Wolfe accepted it with weary dignity. Well, I said, dropping into my desk chair, another deranged lunatic with breath control issues bites the dust. Wolfe closed his eyes. Archie. Yes. Do not summarize my casework so vulgarly. I'm a detective, not a poet. Then exercise restraint. He drank. After a moment, his shoulders loosened. You acquitted yourself well, he said grudgingly. Coming from Wolfe, that was equivalent to a parade in my honor. I do try, I said. Should we expect any more whisperers? No, Wolfe said. One is sufficient. And detestable. He lifted his beer. To silence, I suggested. To routine, Wolfe corrected. We toasted, his beer, my coffee, and the brownstone exhaled a sigh that seemed to carry all the fear and tension of the past week out into the cold New York night. Upstairs, the orchids waited for him. Outside, taxis honked, street lamps flickered, and somewhere far away a city of millions whispered its own secrets. But inside the brownstone, peace. For the moment. Because in New York, the next knock, call, or whisper is always closer than you think.